I counted the dolls in that trunk 4 times. 4 times, and every single time there was one more than there should have been. I need you to sit with that for a second before I tell you anything else about Corn Silk Hollow, because it isn't the kind of wrong you can blink away. A trunk doesn't grow a doll on its own. Something has to put it there. And whatever put that 4th doll in Iris Calder's attic wasn't finished making it yet. Welcome back to the Redacted Archives. Tonight we open case file 097, the doll that isn't finished yet. The recovered account of an estate auctioneer named Nora Tolliver. My name is Nora Tolliver, and until 3 months ago I made my living the ordinary way. I'm an estate auctioneer. I go into houses after the people who love them are gone, and I put a fair price on what's left behind. Furniture, china, the odd box of letters nobody wants, but nobody can throw away either. It's quiet work mostly, respectful work. I've cataloged maybe 400 houses in my career, and not one of them prepared me for the attic in Corn Silk Hollow. Corn Silk Hollow sits about 40 minutes off the main road, the kind of place where the cell signal gives out a mile before the turnoff and doesn't come back. The road narrows to 1 lane about halfway in, gravel giving way to hard-packed dirt, with old fence posts leaning at angles that suggest nobody's straightened them in decades. Somebody told me once that the hollow got its name from a strain of corn the first families grew there. Silk so pale it looked almost white in the field. I didn't think much of that detail at the time. I think about it constantly now. Iris Calder had lived there her whole life, and by the time she passed, she was the last Calder standing. No children, no nieces or nephews anyone could locate. The county sent the estate to auction because there was simply nobody left to inherit it. And that's how I ended up with the file on my desk, and how I ended up driving up that gravel road on a gray Tuesday in October with a clipboard and a flashlight and absolutely no idea what I was walking into. If you're new to these fires we keep lit out here in the dark, my name's Silas Vance. Folks who've been sitting with me a while just call me Abe. And I'm grateful for every one of you who's found your way back to this chair again tonight. Settle in. Let the porch light burn low. This one takes its time getting where it's going, same as all the good ones do. A neighbor met me at the gate that first morning. Her name was Ruth Barlow, and she'd known Iris Calder for 60 years, since they were girls together in the hollow. Ruth wasn't there to buy anything. She just wanted to see the house one more time before strangers picked through it. She walked me up the porch steps and through the front room, naming things as we went. the way people do when a place is about to stop being anyone's home. That chair was Iris's mother's. That clock hadn't run right since the Eisenhower administration. And when I mentioned I still needed to get up into the attic to finish the inventory, Ruth Barlow went quiet in a way that made me stop writing. She told me the attic held a cedar trunk, and inside that trunk were dolls. Corn-husk dolls, the old kind. The kind Iris's grandmother used to make from the last of the harvest every fall. No faces on them. That's tradition, Ruth said. You never give a corn-husk doll a face. Not in this hollow. The old families believed a face was an invitation, and you didn't want to invite anything in that you couldn't ask to leave again. Ruth said the practice went back further than anyone in the hollow could properly account for. Tangled up in the same tired soil as the old church records and the family plots, older than any preacher who'd ever set foot up here. Don't give a doll a face. Don't waste a harvest. Don't count what isn't yours to count. Ruth said it plainly, like she was reciting a fence line. But it wasn't the facelessness that mattered most. It was the counting. Ruth told me that in the Calder family and in a handful of other old hollow families, there was supposed to be exactly one doll in that trunk for every living person under that roof. One doll per soul. When a baby was born into the house, someone sat down that same week and wove a new doll and handed it to the trunk. When somebody in the household passed, their doll was taken out, wrapped in cloth, and buried out past the fence line instead of kept. The trunk was a mirror, Ruth said. It was supposed to hold the family's exact shape, no more and no less. And you never, ever counted the dolls just to be counting them. You only opened that trunk when the number of the living actually changed. Curiosity wasn't a good enough reason. Ruth said her own grandmother used to say, the trunk doesn't like to be checked on. It likes to be trusted. I wrote all of this down the way I write down every piece of local folklore that comes with an estate, which is to say, politely, and without much weight behind it. I've heard versions of this kind of story from a dozen different hollows. Don't whistle after dark. Don't leave a boot upside down. Every old family has its rules, and most of them are just a community's way of remembering itself. I thanked Ruth Barlow for the history. I told her I'd be respectful with the trunk. And once she'd gone back down the mountain to her own place, I climbed the attic stairs alone with my flashlight and my clipboard, because respectful to an auctioneer still means counted and priced. The attic of the Calder house was small and low-roofed, the kind of space where you have to duck under the ridge beam to get anywhere. It smelled like cedar and dust and faintly like the dry, papery smell of dried corn husks, that smell that isn't quite like anything else. The trunk sat under the single round window at the far end, and it wasn't locked. I want to be clear about that. Nothing about opening it felt forced. The lid came up easy, like it had been opened plenty of times before, by plenty of careful hands. Inside, laid in neat rows on a bed of old newspaper, were the dolls. They were beautiful in their strange, faceless way, each one maybe 8 inches tall, husks bound tight at the neck and wrists with cotton thread, little skirts of husk fanned out at the bottom like something between a woman and a wheat sheaf. Some were clearly old, gone the soft brown color of tea, the thread gone brittle. Others were newer, pale gold, the husks still holding a little bend of green near the seams. I counted them the way I count everything, out of pure professional habit, moving my flashlight left to right, row by row, murmuring the number under my breath. 11. According to the county file sitting in my bag, the Calder household, at its largest in recent decades, had never held more than 7 living people at once. And for the last 11 years, it had held exactly 1. Iris Calder, alone. I counted again, thinking I'd lost my place in the dim light. 11. I moved every doll out of the trunk and laid them on the attic floor in a straight line, the way you'd lay out silverware, so there could be no mistake about it. 11 dolls for a woman who had died alone in a house with no other living soul in it. I sat back on my heels and looked at that row of blank husk faces looking at nothing. And I felt the first real cold drop through my chest, the kind that has nothing to do with the temperature of an October attic. I told myself there was a simple explanation. Maybe old dolls from generations back never got buried out past the fence line the way Ruth described. Maybe the tradition had slipped, the way traditions do, and Iris just never got around to retiring the dolls of relatives long gone. That was a reasonable, boring, human explanation, and I clung to it the way you cling to any explanation that lets you close a trunk and go back downstairs. Before I let myself count a 3rd time, I went looking for something that would settle it plainly, the way a birth certificate settles an argument better than a memory does. There was a family Bible downstairs on a shelf in the front room, the kind with a whole page in the front given over to births and deaths in careful, changing handwriting across 5 generations. I brought it up to the attic with me, and laid it open beside the row of dolls, running my finger down the names. 7 Calders born into that house across the record. 7 deaths marked beside 7 names. The last one Iris's own, filled in, I guessed, by whoever found her. 7 and 7. A closed book by any honest reading of it. 11 dolls made no sense against that page, no matter how many times I added the column. And yet there they sat, plain as anything. 11 husk bodies in a straight row, under a window that let in no light I could account for either. It's the not going back downstairs that I think about now, because I counted them a 3rd time. I don't fully know why. Call it the same itch that makes you press on a bruise. I laid the dolls out again, end to end along the floorboards, and counted left to right under my breath. And this time there were 12. I stood very still in that low attic for a long moment. I recounted the same 12 dolls a 4th time, out loud now, tapping each one with the tip of my pen as I went, watching my own hand do it so there could be no mistake, no trick of shadow, no doll hiding behind another. 12. And the 12th doll, the one at the very end of the row, wasn't finished. It wasn't a full 8 inches like the others. It was small, curled, barely the length of my palm. The husks still damp-looking at the binding, greener than any of the rest, as though it had been woven within the last day instead of pulled fresh from decades of storage. Its wrists weren't tied off yet. One whole side of it was still loose, unwoven husk trailing off into nothing, like whoever was making it had simply set it down mid-stitch and meant to come back to it. I did not touch that 12th doll. I want that on the record. I backed out of that attic, pulled the trapdoor shut behind me, and I drove down that gravel road faster than I should have on a wet October evening. And I did not look at the county file again that night. I went back 3 days later, told myself I had a job to finish, that a professional doesn't get spooked out of an inventory by old corn husks and an overactive imagination sharpened by a lonely neighbor's ghost stories. I climbed those attic stairs again in the flat gray light of a Friday afternoon, and I opened that trunk, and I counted 13. The new doll, the 13th, was smaller still than the 12th had been, barely 2 inches, barely more than a bound knot of pale green husk, with a faint suggestion of arms starting to separate from the body, like something being sketched before it was drawn. And the 12th doll, the one that had been unfinished 3 days before, was whole now, fully bound, fully formed, indistinguishable, if I hadn't watched it happen with my own eyes, from every other doll that had sat in that trunk for 50 years. I called Ruth Barlow that same night, and I asked her, as steadily as I could manage, whether anyone in the Calder line was expecting a baby. Any cousin, any grandniece, anybody at all with even the thinnest thread of Calder blood still moving through them. Ruth was quiet a long time on the line. She said the family died out with Iris. She said that was the whole reason the county had the file in the first place. And then she asked me, very carefully, whether I'd counted the dolls again. I lied to her. I told her no. I went back to Corn Silk Hollow one more time after that. Not for the county, not for the inventory, but because I couldn't make myself stop thinking about that trunk sitting up there in the dark, doing whatever it was doing, whether anybody watched it or not. I climbed those stairs a third time in the deep quiet of early evening, and this time, before I even reached the trunk, I could hear it. A dry, papery rustling, husk against husk, coming from inside the closed lid. The sound of something shifting its weight in a space too small to shift in. I didn't open it that time. I stood at the top of those attic stairs with my hand flat against the cold wood of the lid, feeling that rustling move under my palm like a held breath. And I understood, all at once and completely, that Ruth Barlow's grandmother had been right about one thing above all else. That trunk doesn't like to be checked on. It likes to be trusted. And I had checked on it 4 times now, out loud, out of curiosity, with no birth and no death to justify the counting. I had opened a ledger that wasn't mine to open, in a house that wasn't mine to keep. And I had done it enough times that whatever kept that ledger had started to take notice of the one doing the counting. I never finished the inventory. Another auctioneer from 2 counties over took the file when I told my supervisor I couldn't get back up that mountain, and I didn't offer a reason, because there wasn't one I could say out loud and keep my job. I don't know what happened to that trunk when the house finally sold. I don't know if the new owners ever found their way up to that attic, or if they did, whether they thought to count what was inside it. What I do know is that 3 weeks ago, on a Tuesday evening in my own kitchen, 2 counties away from Corn Silk Hollow, I found a single dry corn husk lying on my counter. Just one. Pale green at the edge, the way a fresh one looks before it browns. I don't grow corn. I don't buy it with the husk still on. I live alone, same as Iris Calder did at the end, in a house with exactly 1 living soul under its roof. And as far as I know, that's still an accurate count. I picked that husk up off my counter, and I have not been able to throw it away since. It sits in a drawer in my kitchen now, and some nights, when the house is quiet enough, I think I can hear it, just barely, shifting against the wood.
Before we let this one go quiet, I want to say thank you for sitting up here in the dark with me again. If these old case files are giving you something to rest your mind on at night, the kindest thing you can do is hit that subscribe button so the next one finds you when it's ready. It costs you nothing, and it means more than you'd think to an old man telling stories to an empty room. That's Case File 097 Closed, though I don't know that closed is the right word for it. My name's Silas Vance. Most everybody just calls me Abe. Rest easy tonight. And if you keep something counted in your own house, a jar of buttons, a row of photographs on the mantel, anything with a number that's supposed to hold steady, I'd think twice before I checked it, just to be checking. Some counts don't like being watched. Good night, hollow folk. I'll see you at the next fire.